Right, let's talk about what we mean when we say that rights violations of animals are inherent to animal products. First of all, let's separate the concepts that get mixed up in this process. Death is a broad concept that entails a lot in it and often is thrown in there without specification. The biggest cause of death is life, so we have to be careful here and both separate between death and killing and consider all types of deaths occurring from all actions. You know my stance on this. Not every product of an animal is also a product of exploitation, in my opinion, and we have to keep exploitation in mind when talking about this morally. I went through it in this video very thoroughly. This is where we also have to separate the moral questions from any other questions. I might find it icky to consider eating a corpse of a naturally dead being, because I had the concept of respecting the dead drilled into me the same as everybody else. But I no longer see it as a moral question because I consider morality to apply only to presently sentient beings. I do listen to my icky feelings though. People come to the conclusion of veganism through different pathways and have different ideas on how they see the movement rationalized. Some land on abolishing rights violations, others prefer to look at it from the angle of reducing suffering. And I think that those different approaches should be considered. I've said before that as soon as animals have rights, as soon as the last slaughterhouse is closed and there is no more farms and no one is experimenting on animals anymore, I'm turning into suffering reduction advocate. But for now, I am an animal rights advocate. The way I see it, animals should have the basic animal rights to have their lives and bodily integrity be under the protection of the government. They should have those rights because they have the same traits for which humans got those exact rights. Exploitation and killing are included in rights violations, in my opinion. But since there's more to rights than that, and since some people don't really care about rights for animals, let's keep these concepts separate, especially since I don't think suffering is necessarily included in the concept of rights, because some suffering can be defined as someone's best interest. Okay, now that we have all our turnips in a row, I want to propose a mental device for measuring inherent properties of a thing. As usual in case of investigations like this, we have to isolate the thing we are talking about. So imagine you have a metaphorical box. This box has the potential to give you a thing you want or need. But in order to get that thing, you have to introduce into the box the necessary ingredients. You can restart the device at any time or revert it to a previous state anywhere on the timeline. But it's not a magic box. Whatever you want out of that box has to be created by the things you put in it. If whatever you have to put into that box or whatever happens in that box results in rights violations, kills, exploitation or suffering of a sentient being, then whatever you take out of that box has moral implications. If you cannot take a thing out of that box without moral infractions, then those moral infractions are inherent to the thing you took out of the box. To simplify this device, if the things you put into the box are not sufficient to create the thing you want to take out of the box, then you have not created that thing. If things put into that box are not necessary for the thing to take out of the box, then you've put too many things into the box. So imagine you want to take wheat out of the box to make some bread or something. You need to put a wheat seed or a wheat plant into that box, and also soil, air, water, minerals. So far so good, but wait, what is the origin of those minerals in there? Some of you might say, well, we can put manure in there, and that would potentially be a product of exploitation, although it doesn't have to be. I'd volunteer my poop for the box for sure. But you can also put synthetic nitrogen in there. Remember, right now we are in an isolated metaphorical box. No climate to have climate change, no humans and animals to be affected by that climate change either. But also it's the excess of synthetic nitrogen that is the problem, so we can decide to put the exact amount we need. We can also put compost in there. We can also put nothing in there. As the wheat plant will still grow, it will just have lower yield with lower protein content. Right, so far no rights violations, kills, exploitation or suffering of sentient beings, meaning that wheat as food does not have inherent moral infractions. More steps are probably needed, like introducing some carbon in there and taking out some air, constant watering, maybe checking soil acidity. But when the harvest is ready, I can take out the food without any moral implications. I probably missed some essential ingredients. Let me know in the comments if I did. Now let's declare that what we want the box to spit out is some meat. What do we need to put into the box? Let's start with dog meat. Let's assume that this was a puppy born without rights violations to a free mother, because we want to keep this experiment as clean as possible. We just want a piece of meat, not a mass production of it. Let's also say that unfortunately the mother died, so we didn't have to take the puppy away from her. So no suffering occurred in order to put the puppy ingredient into the box. We're also going to feed the puppy a well-supplemented vegan diet made out of lab-made supplements and that wheat we previously took out of the box, not containing any moral implications. Maybe to avoid suffering, we put another puppy in there to keep each other company. We pop our hand in daily to rub their bellies and give them love. We should pop in some soft beds in there as well, medical attention if they get sick, and now we can kill the puppies as soon as they are big. But I mean, we don't have to, right? What are we told when talking about veganism? We can give them good long lives. So let's continue this experiment for 15 to 25 years until the puppies get very old and die. And then we can fillet them and take out the meat, the carcass, and a few pints of blood. So is this meat clean of moral implications? I don't think so. The puppies' rights were violated, they were not free to leave the box, and they were exploited for their flesh. Even though we could eliminate suffering and killing, the other two things cannot be avoided in my opinion. But a living animal is not the only ingredient that we can put into the box. These days we have other ideas. For instance, we can put in a biopsy of a living animal. Wait, immediately we have rights violations and exploitation. We can biopsy a freshly killed animal. Wait. If an animal was killed for meat, then biopsying them for meat is part of the exploitation. We can biopsy an animal who died naturally not long before a biopsy. That solved all the moral implications, since dead, no longer sentient beings don't have rights and cannot be exploited, in my opinion. And we are making sure for this mental device to take the best case scenarios, so also let's assume that the biopsy was taken from a naturally dead, free animal. Then we put in a non-animal based growth serum, a reactor and maybe a 3D printer. So if we are very careful with which ingredients we put into the box, we can, in this specific singular instance, take out a piece of meat without any moral implications, just to make sure that everybody who's listening can understand how the device works. This does not exalt all meats from moral implications, only those that had these specific ingredients put into it. So most cases of meat have inherent moral implications. Let's quick fire a few more scenarios. We can put a dying animal into the box and get meat, but it's still accompanied by rights violation and exploitation. I think as soon as you put a living animal into the box, those two moral implications appear immediately, because remember, you start with the purpose of taking out a product. Eliminating the other two implications can't make it moral in any way. But if we put an already dead animal, like roadkill, we can immediately take the meat out, no moral implications there. Still icky though. I was given an example of unethical milk in the comments of another video. This example was attributed to interspecies and proposed to me by Femaka2538. And I agree that that would be milk with no moral implications, so let's reverse engineer it quickly. The scenario was that a dairy cow who lost her calves, or they were already taken away by the farmers, was rescued and brought to sanctuary and had to be milked to relieve pressure. How does our device help us here? Well, if we put the cow into the box for the purpose of getting milk, then immediately we have two moral infractions. Since this is not the singular scenario, and the milk was not taken for the purpose of food, this cow cannot get into that box. This means that in this singular scenario, the cow was milked outside the box, meaning with no premeditated intentions, and then that milk can be put in the box and immediately taken out as food, and no moral infractions occurred. Although I would add a pasteurization device into that box. Seriously, raw milk is dangerous food, yo. Let's give tribute to Piers Morgan for this quickie. What if we want to take almonds and avocados out of the box?
Do you eat almonds? Do you drink almond milk? Eat almonds? Almonds. Do you drink almond milk? The demolition of billions of bees who get murdered.
I feel sorry for the bees.
How many billions of bees die eat almonds? Almonds and avocados. Do you eat almonds or drink almond milk?
Boycott.
Billions of bees get murdered. Why don't you boycott almonds and avocados? Avocados. Almond milk. A little bee, billion almond milk. Almonds in your avocados, 50 billion bees.
Yes, almonds and avocados. I had to read up on this a little bit. Avocados are self-fertile. All they need for you to introduce some wind or even just shake it a bit for the tree to bear fruit. The most popular varieties of almond trees are not self-fertile and need cross-pollination. Damn, we might need to extinct the most popular strains of almonds in a second. Technically, we need to put two compatible trees into the box and make sure that one granule of pollen from one tree gets into the flower of the other tree. Honeybees are widely used in the real world, but to me it doesn't seem to be necessary. They must facilitate bigger yield. And we are not concerned with that right now. We just want some food to come out of the box. Efficiency and profitability are not part of this discussion. And that's where some people would push back on this model and say, who cares if a thing is inherent or not? Crop deaths happen now. Bees are exploited for almonds and avocados now. Well, it's important to know whether the moral question is inherent or not, so that we know how to approach the problem, in my opinion. If a thing has inherent moral implications, as most animal products do, with very few singular deus ex machina exceptions or technological replacements, then that thing can't exist and be moral. Then we need to boycott those industries and either replace them with industries that can produce the same thing but with no moral infractions, or say goodbye to that thing forever. If a thing doesn't have inherent moral implications, then that thing can exist without moral implications, and whatever moral infractions it has outside the box in the real world, then to fix the problem we should fix those moral implications without wiping the product out. Hope this was clear. Let me know what you think about this mental device, and I guess if you have a name for it. I have been calling it the minimalist box, but I think it should have a more dramatic name, something similar to the veil of ignorance. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell and share it somewhere online. See you next time.